Hello and welcome to Path to Power. I'm Matt Cooper.
And I'm Ivan Yates.
Well, we're recording this on the Wednesday, the day that the Dáil returns. Just to let you know, because of our work schedules, it wasn't possible for Ivan or myself to meet to do this on Thursday and Friday. I actually walked by Kildare Street on the way up, and it was shut off in case of protest, and Mary down by Merrion Square, all shut off as well, which is, I suppose, a bit of a shame when you feel that you can't now go about your normal business in Dublin city centre because of the fear of protests. And just briefly, what do you make of Helen McEntee's idea that you won't be allowed to wear masks at protests? That this is one of the things she is bringing to government, the idea that the Gardaí will be entitled to enforce the removal of masks at protests if they perceive that there's a threat of violence.
Totally agree with it, insofar as that, you know, when I had betting shops, people came in balaclavas and motorcycle helmets.
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. But they had an intent to steal. It was quite clear what they were doing.
No, they
were your gamblers. They weren't actually people who were coming to rob you.
These were robbers. So the point is this: if people are rioting or committing a crime and they can't be identified because they are concealing their face, I'm actually not very sympathetic to them.
Okay.
I mean, like, straight up, I mean, like, so today the Dáil is going back.
I wonder how many of these people actually refused to wear masks during COVID, but now put on the masks when they want to protest.
Very good point.
It's going to be very difficult to police them. I mean, what about people who maybe will claim a medical exemption that ironically, I have to wear a mask at these protests because I can't breathe in the noxious air or I could get ill, or who might say for cultural reasons that they're wearing a mask?
Well, this is the very same as anonymity on social media. You don't have a right to say and do what you like, blackguard everyone, act in a violent behaviour and threatening manner, and then expect to have anonymity. You should face the consequences of the law, and you should be readily identified.
I'm not unsympathetic to that, but I wonder how many guards will actually want to go and start asking people to remove their masks or threatening to arrest them if they don't.
In fairness, if it was the public order unit, they wouldn't be asking.
Okay. Did you enjoy your trip to Cork and your night out in the Olympia, which I should say as well, for those who were, and we thank you to everybody who turned up. We had phenomenal numbers. I mean, I'm not just saying this. I mean, they weren't as big as Donald Trump's rallies, but they weren't far behind. We had over 1,100 people
as long and boring
Olympia.
as that.
And 800 plus people in Cork. So thank you to all of you who came along. We really appreciate it. And the opportunity to have the chat with you as well in the bar afterwards. If you want to catch up, subscribers have the opportunity to hear them spread over 4 different episodes for the subscriber edition of Path to Power. What you missed if you weren't at the live event, or if you want to hear it back again, what was said at the live event. And it was a great opportunity to meet people with points of view to put across as to the state of the nation and the state of the podcast. Indeed.
And so can I say what I should say, or should I say what I really think?
Say what you
All
want.
right.
Say what you want. Have you ever not said what you want to say?
All the time. All the time.
Oh, you hold back?
Well, put it like this. I sometimes... Like there was some stories I told about polling cards in Cork where I didn't explicitly say what really happened. But the point is this.
I think everyone knew what you meant.
Okay. So one was quite anxious about them beforehand, because I've done a lot of things. Like you did this thing in Cork, 4 Sad Men or something, talking about their books.
Myself, Victor O'Toole, Shane Ross and Pat Lee.
Well,
yes.
I'd say 4 Sad Men. But anyway, the point about it was that you and you've done things with Roy Keane. I had never done anything like this. I have dealt with large crowds, and I've dealt both as MC and guest speaker with all sorts of things. I've never actually done a thing whereby someone paid €36 to go and to listen to no one else, only us. So that was
and our guests, an excellent guest.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
but a lot of them didn't know who the guests were.
That's true.
Yeah. So in retrospect, they might say they went for the guests, but when they were buying the ticket, they didn't know. So the first thing I would say is that surprised me was I thought only 20 would turn up to each, and I was shocked about that. The second thing I would say is that a lot of people who are friends of mine, say around my age group in their 60s and so on, haven't been around the block, were very surprised at the audience. Because of the lighting system, I couldn't see out. They said they were predominantly males in their 20s and early 30s. That isn't to say there weren't females. I found afterwards in the bar, in both cases, that they were absolute political activists of all parties. They were people who were canvassing, so they were bending my ear about their pony in Rathdown or in wherever in Cork and so on. So that actually showed me that there's a level of interest in politics per se, as it is in Ireland. The other thing I would say is that Mandy Johnson and Kevin, I really enjoyed. I did not know, and I feel a great disservice has been done to McGreevy, even this week with the Apple money, whereby she said what he actually said: when I have it, I spend it, and in the same sentence said, but I don't have the money right now. In all my knowledge of politics, I actually wasn't aware that was the truth of it. So I learned that. I also learned that Ireland thinks, while I have been berating what they do on a generic basis of internet polls, I didn't realise they had a huge thriving business working for the political parties in named ballot paper polls, which I do take seriously. So Kevin's actually business empire actually caught my eye because...
This is Kevin Cunningham.
Yes. So I had a confluence of meeting other people who were speaking of them. I said, but sure, you're the people criticising, their polls and all the rest of it. And in Cork...
Oh my God, your mind was being broadened.
Absolutely. In Cork, less so. Insofar as
steady now, careful.
I asked you at the outset, did you want me to say what I really thought? So anyway, so in Cork, first of all, I never cease to be amazed, but I was shocked. I text 3 or 4 of my really good Cork friends and I said, just tell me some Cork humour, tell me some issues, so the North Inner Ring Road and all that kind of... I didn't know about 3 hours before the show. So a lot of people, and the Tobin joke about the bottle in Cork and some of the hurling stories about the second strike and so on. And I should just explain, Matt came out in his red jersey, so I was very pleased.
My replica 1990 Cork hurling jersey.
Exactly. So that was the term. I always thought Cork people were parochial and clannish on steroids. They were only really interested in Cork issues, Cork perspectives, their sense of national grievance and all that. And you know what? I found that difficult. But I found Dan Boyle interesting insofar as that he was able to back and forth with you about projects, the convention centre, which I'm really not totally up to speed in. But I have to say, in all honesty, as someone who has been chairman of a company that's built 90 houses and in the middle of building 400 houses in Middleton, and someone who actually has got really deep into the agri-sector of nitrates, that I actually thought that some of the bland banalities that Holly was coming out with... This
is Holly Kearns, leader of Social Democrats.
Because she was a guest and doing us a favour, and because I was honoured that she came along, and she's such a nice person, and all of that. But to be honest with you, in any other milieu, I'd say, sorry, Holly, you're talking horseshit here. And you know what I mean? The level of... So, and I think that passes for the general level of debate about housing in this country, in terms of... Like, I asked her, would you reform the planning system? And 5 minutes later, she waffled but didn't say anything. Like, she wasn't going to take on objectors. And to be honest with you, my tolerance of that, maybe because I'm dealing with B2B instead of B2C in my day job, my tolerance of it is very low.
Okay,
Is that unfair?
No, I'll give you a couple of things, a couple of takeaways I have. You say Cork people are parochial, only interested. Funnily enough, a number of people in Dublin said to me, and don't take offence to this, Ivan, now and stuff, that when it came to the constituency predictions, they were only interested in their own area where they were going to vote and didn't actually care too much about what you were telling them about.
We did all 12, we should just say. Yeah.
Yeah, so they just sort of felt, well, one woman who was there said to me, who's a big fan of yours in particular, and not so much of me, she said she only cared about Dunleary because that's where she lives and where she votes. So she wasn't too much
into... And she probably only concerned that Fine Gael will get 2.
And, well, I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not making an assumption.
Yeah.
I had one really interesting conversation with a young man who's a student from Limerick, and he took issue with something I had said previously on this programme about recognising the state of Palestine. And he was very much of the view that this was a mistake by the government to have done this, that you don't have defined boundaries, you haven't had free and fair elections in God knows how long, and various other reasons for it, and was also a little bit concerned about what he would regard as an anti-Israel sentiment that was. And Yeah, well, I still believe that it was the right thing to do to recognise the state of Palestine. He really argued the point really well to me. I was really particularly impressed by it.
He was pro-Israeli, was he?
Yeah, and I mean, like, I would have, I don't have any sympathies for what Israel is doing. And my God, the latest thing now, blowing up the pagers for the Hezbollah is just extraordinary stuff. I mean, like, there are people who were saying that that's like a state acting as a terrorism organisation to an extent. But despite the fact that I would hate what Israel is doing in Gaza, I still do believe in the right of Israel to exist and that it needs a degree of protection from what it has encircling him. So it was really good to have that conversation with the person.
What did you think was the difference between the Cork and Dublin show?
The Cork crowd is just so nice, much nicer, basically.
For the love of Jesus, I've heard it all.
I had such a good reaction from people in the pub, in the bar afterwards.
Well, I should just say my first quip was, well, if you love Cork so much, why did you leave it? You know what I mean?
And as I responded, the only thing I said was because it was the 1980s, Fine Gael had wrecked the country and I needed to move to Dublin to get to a job.
That's always a valid comment. So just to say, in fairness, you don't just put on that. So to all the Opera Festival, Cork Opera Festival people, Opera House Festival with their podcast festival who invited us, and to all the MCD people, particularly to all the people in Noel Kelly Productions who I don't think they've done this type of gig before, and the courtesy and kindness that we were shown, as well as the people coming. And I'm actually surprised they laughed as much as they did. Not so much the Cork people, but the Dublin people laughed and laughed and laughed.
We're always laughing at you.
Okay. I don't mind that. It's with is the word I go with.
Okay, well, there are other things I want to... Actually, you know what? We can bounce all over the place here today, and there are certain things that will be available on our subscription episode, which comes out after the weekend as well. But actually, given that we were in Cork, we were discussing Micheál McGrath down there, and as it happens, he hasn't got a big job in Europe. He's not going to be one of the vice presidents of the European Commission. He's got a job to which, okay, he's a very talented guy, but he's a talented guy with numbers. This guy is an accountant. This guy is into his economics. He's a bit of a numbers nerd, and he's been given a job in charge of justice, which looks like a hospital pass to me, in the sense that this is one of the most difficult jobs, particularly with immigrants coming into Europe, and that's part of the brief. We'll be looking after issues in relation to that. But it's not one of the top-ranking jobs as far as the Commission is concerned. So does it imply that this is not a personal snub to McGrath? This is a snub to Ireland that Ursula von der Leyen has actually decided upon, because we haven't played ball in relation to defence issues for Eastern Europe. In fact, they're quite annoyed with us from what I'm hearing in relation to not wanting to get involved in financially supporting enhanced defence, given that we had looked for bailouts previously, that we want to support on Brexit, and that we're not actually giving the support that the European Commission wants, and that this, and then also the vote against von der Leyen in relation to Gaza by the 4 Fianna Fáil MEPs, that this has actually a self-inflicted wound for Ireland.
Well, a few things. We discussed this in Cork before the event, and my source texted me on Saturday, because I actually texted him before the Friday event. I said, what job is he going to get? He texted me on Saturday morning to say justice. Yeah, I was fuming with that, because it would have been great to be able to say that off the thing. But so first of all, I rate McGrath. I have no fears on his background as a chartered accountant and his numeracy thing. I found when people change portfolio, say to environment, health, to an economic ministry, they actually had a new zeal of life, and it's your political skills you're looking for. So I'd have no fears on that score. In terms of for Ireland, so what is he going to be dealing with? So he's going to be involved with Orbán and Hungary, and whether to suspend their voting rights, and that whole, he's going to be centre stage in that. He's going to be centre stage in terms of GDPR and the way that's developed. For example, in terms of electronic health records, the biggest rock on the road why some hospitals are not making records available to others is simply because of GDPR, and it's bogus. So that is actually a job of work that he has to do. And the whole justice and security thing and so on. But when you look through, there's two things about the Commission. One is that he is answerable to, I think it's the Finnish commissioner now. So the executive presidents are actually like the senior ministers and the others are the
they're
junior
vice
ministers.
presidents, I think it's a term for them. But I know it's a layered commission.
So while it's a proper job and it's mid-ranking, it is the second division, and I think we should be in no doubt about it.
It's junior hurling.
Yeah, he has to, well, I call it more intermediate.
Very good. I didn't realise you'd actually have that level of knowledge.
I have presented medals to people at junior and intermediate, not for senior level. They get someone more important than me. But anyway, so that's it. There is a bigger issue here, which is this, that, and I often say this about business journalists, you know, when I'm talking to a CEO and they've just won a huge award or they've done some breakthrough of 100 million turnover, I said, when you're talking to the business journalists, don't think that they are lauding your success, because in their inner soul, they resent your success. They have a chip off their shoulder. No. And so where I'm going with this is the rest of Europe resents Ireland's success with FDI. It resents the corporation money. They resent the Apple money. They resent everything. And what you're seeing now is two manifestations of that. That the golden carpet and the Céad Míle Fáilte for Ireland is diminished. Ireland is seen as a threat and needs to be maybe put in its place as a 1% of the population in the most peripheral location. So that is going to manifest itself in another way. And that is that the next commissioner, and the most important one, is not necessarily trade, it is going to be competition. And what you're going to see is the state aid rules, which forbid any country absolutely getting the checkbook out. Because when we go on to talk about others, that those rules are going to be changed so that others with deeper pockets can start to give very generous inducements. In other words, they are all after our FDI.
Well, a couple of things on that. And one is that I think there may be that we are going to fall into a trap, and I alluded to this earlier, a bit of that we like to have our cake and eating it when it comes to the European Union. And, you know, we went and we got bailed out from our financial recklessness a decade and a half ago, and we somehow managed to, you know, remember then we voted against the treaty in the referendum as well, which really pissed them off.
Was that Lisbon?
I can't remember this stage, but I think it was Lisbon, and we had to go back and vote again to get the right answer. And there was at that stage a feeling in Europe that, you know, these guys, these buccos got completely ahead of themselves, and they need a bit of... But we managed to work our way back in, so much so that we had enormous support from the European Commission and the European Union when it came to the Brexit negotiations, and we got largely what we wanted because of EU help.
Someone said to me a great thing. He said, never let someone repay a big favour with a little favour. And I thought that was rather clever. And that's what you're saying is a big favour with us was not to isolate us post-Brexit, that they repaid everything they owed to Ireland with that favour. Was that it? Yeah,
but when it comes to the whole thing about in relation to now, and I think it is, I don't think we fully understand here necessarily in Ireland about the fear in Eastern Europe of Russia. And when they see what has been done by Ukraine, or to Ukraine, and they fear the potential for other European states similarly being invaded by Russia.
Yeah.
And it's not just down to NATO. The European Union has to be cohesive in relation to this. And one of the things that will actually happen is that there's going to be increased defence funding, particularly if Trump gets in the United States and starts putting pressure on Europe to actually contribute more to NATO. The pressure will come on us as well. And they're not going to particularly like our much prized military neutrality, you know, saying, oh, well, we're above all that. No, you know, you've helped us out in this, but we're not going to get involved in that. And I think that's potentially going to be a major political issue in Ireland in the future.
And also your point on Palestine that the guy spoke to you about, like, I don't know if our solo run on Palestine was appreciated.
Well, it wasn't quite solo. It was Spain and Norway,
But I don't think Esther Van der Leyen, which led to the Fianna Fáil MEPs voting against her, I don't think she was on that page.
But funny you say about competition, and I know we'll speak more about it in our subscription edition about whether we run the risk of losing foreign direct investment. I'm really fascinated by the Intel story this week. Because Intel has committed to Ireland. What's left of Intel is a struggling business, but it has given up on a major German expansion. It intended to have a major new plant in Magdeburg in the old East Germany. But the Germans were putting 9.9 billion euro in state aid into this. Now, they were been allowed to do so on the basis that Europe wanted chip-making capacity in the European Union so it wouldn't get caught with supply chain issues like it did during COVID. And all those chips will now be made in Ireland, funnily enough. In fact, the two major locations for Intel outside the United States are Ireland and Israel. And that's now been focused on apparently as well by some of the anti-war activists. What is Intel doing in Israel? But it isn't going into Germany. It isn't going to Poland. But the point is, the Germans were being allowed by the EU to pump 9.9 billion into this. They won't now. They'll spend it in other ways.
Which was a state aid.
And that's exactly it. So this idea that Ireland's tax is a corporation tax rate is some competitive advantage. It's our way of doing things, whereas other countries do get away with giving direct grants. So let's not fool ourselves here that we're the only ones who are trying to attract foreign multinational investment.
There was a very interesting paper published by Draghi during the week who said that 800 billion needed to be spent by Europe, and what you just alluded to, chips and so on, and that Europe would bear. That is all not on the basis of, we go to Ireland. You probably go to the country with the biggest population and so on, and the biggest labour market and so on. So
that isn't probably going to happen, but it needs to happen. Draghi, this is already various countries saying, oh no, that's too much. We can't borrow. I mean, there would have to be common EU borrowing as well to do that, which is something that Ireland has resisted as well, because we only want to go so far in relation to surrendering our fiscal abilities and things like that. We want to raise our own taxes and do our own spending without having this common pool for the EU. But there are serious issues in relation to the future of the EU economy overall. I mean, it is struggling by comparison with the United States. Germany quite resembles Britain at the moment in how bad things are economically. Mm-hmm. This Draghi investment is a very, very good idea, which is most unlikely to be acted upon. But maybe if you're talking about the common good of the EU and Ireland's attractiveness to American companies as a foothold into the EU, maybe we need that Draghi thing to happen.
The other thing that's beneath the surface. So I've always said those with the 10 votes, France, Italy, Spain, Germany, the bigger countries, and UK was one of those, will always be the boss. But one of the things that used to happen to me was that any time St. Patrick's Day fell on a Monday, I might have an Agriculture Council meeting that day, and what they would do, or the next day, they would host in the embassy in Brussels all the Irish people working across all the DGs, all the commission. And you'd be amazed the number of people there, and the network of Cork people and Limerick people and so on. My understanding is the number of Irish people working I'm not talking about chef de cabinet, working in the permanent secretariat is collapsing. So and that soft power that we had is definitely on the decline.
Actually, there's a government campaign to try and get people to take up those jobs at present, because I interviewed Jennifer Carroll McNeil on The Last Word in relation to that. There is a serious concern that we're not sending enough people into the jobs in Europe as to have that influence. And these are very well-paid jobs, I think, and there are tax benefits of it.
But the influence, I'm saying, of networking people.
Absolutely.
By the way, would you ever have a word with your boss and say to soften the tone on such and such? That is unbelievable soft power. Okay,
we need to take a break. And in taking the break, if you want ad-free listening, then you can become a subscriber for just €6 a month, and you get the benefit of an additional episode each week as well, in which we also answer your questions.
Just on the subscriber thing, one fella said, I'm after subscribing to the thing. It's going to cost me €6 a month where I live. Now, at some places in Dublin, it's $7.30 for a pint. I couldn't believe it. But the point is, he said, will you buy me the pint I'm now not going to get for the subscription?
I'm surprised you don't know the price of a pint. When you used to live in some of the most expensive
That's $5.40
areas.
in Enniscorthy.
You used to live in Sandymount. How much were you paying for your pints in Sandymount?
I was never paying $7.30. I nearly died. And you see, you just tap and go. You don't know what you're paying.
That's a very...
especially if you're buying drink. That wouldn't affect you now. But
remember, it's mail@pathtopowerpodcast.com if you want to get in touch. And if you want to subscribe, pathtopowerpodcast.com is where you can do so. We'll be back after this short break. Welcome back to Path to Power. And as I said at the outset, this is one that we've recorded on Wednesday lunchtime. So hopefully no riots have broken out at Leinster House, or there has been nothing major has happened between our recording and you getting a chance to listen to this. I see Micheál Martin suddenly this week at his parliamentary party thinking, it was talking about a February election. Remember, we spoke in Cork about, you predicted the Valentine's Day election. In fact, it was on last week's podcast. But it seems that Micheál Martin is now buying into that date. What is going on?
Well, only this morning I spoke to a member of the parliamentary party who was at it, and he's...
So which parliamentary party?
Fianna Fáil.
Okay.
Said to me, I said, okay, what was said about an election? Oh, his message was very clear. Be ready for both options. They don't trust Harris. He might give him a fool's steer on it. So they are absolutely open-minded that it could be either. I was wondering today, because I can't tell you from the Fine Gael thinking how cock-a-hoop they are. They are really on the happy pills. A poll came out at the weekend having them, sort of 5 points clear.
Yeah,
on
26%.
No, 23. 23.
But be cock-a-hoop on 23%.
Well, sorry. No, sorry. What their cock-a-hoop was, Fianna Fáil were on 18 and Shinners were on 18. That's what had them really cock-a-hoop. But no, they actually believe their own publicity now that they're on this surge and they're now looking at seats they're going to win.
Again, can I say 23% constitutes a surge?
No, absolutely. No, but they believe this is only the beginning. In a campaign, he'll take off. And also, whereas we alluded to you passing Leinster House gates. In my experience, it is always the case that oppositions go down in the summer months and governments go up because the Dáil isn't sitting. From today, he will not be getting a free run at the 6 and 9 o'clock news. He will not be getting a free run at Rosa Tralee, Paralympians, county shows. He will be getting it in the neck from the opposition. And that will change the narrative. And that's the first test I'll see, whether that might puncture, you know what I mean? When you're actually working in the media and you see, the crossfire and, oh, right. Well, so something like Bikegate in recess is completely different to Bikegate. The Dáil is now adjourned in uproar because of this. They want a head or whatever. So I do think that the tailwind that Fine Gael have had will be more questionable going forward. And also there is the question that in every political career, if anyone takes on a new job, they get a honeymoon. Will it last till February? So I think Fianna Fáil actually believed themselves tactically in November election, but you put your finger on something else, which is what's happened to Micheál Martin. So Micheál Martin's stick is this: I am the adult in the room. I don't do hyperbole. I don't do drama. I don't do over the top. And then at whose book?
Senna Maloney's, of the book about the murder of Sophie Toscan de Plantier, allegedly by the late Ian Bailey.
So he was doing the launch and said that it was a great pity that he wasn't put before a jury, which was actually an attack on the criminal justice system, if you think about it, the Gardaí and so on. But it's not like him. The second thing that he absolutely, so he did an interview, he did Morning Ireland, he was very tetchy, you know what I mean, sort of, how dare you ask me that question, saying the country is doomed or whatever. But in an interview at News Talk with Shane Coleman, he went out of his way to say it was a disgrace. It was outrageous that the November riots still hadn't seen anyone see the inside of a prison or a courtroom since.
He's right.
And no, he's absolutely no, sorry. But the point is this, that I'm sort of picking up that he's a little tetchy. And he's actually changing his adult in the room persona to be a little bit more dramatic.
Is that wise? Because I suspect one of the problems that Mary Lou MacDonald has had has been that she has been, and indeed it's Pierce Doherty and others as well, is that people have tired of hearing them for the last 4 years being overwhelmingly negative about things. So surely it doesn't make sense for Micheál Martin to follow them into giving out about everything.
Well, so I think Fianna Fáil are tetchy about the polls because they've had 3 years of polls which were completely unrelated to the actual vote they got in the local and European elections, and they feel the polls are misguided because they believe that 50% of people who cast their vote do it for a candidate rather than a party. Therefore, a generic poll about Fianna Fáil as a brand will not reflect them, and so they say they're on the same as Fine Gael. But so they're touchy about that. But I think they're starting to get a little touchy about the Duracell bunny that is Simon Harris. I think, I'll put it like this, I think a lot of them think he's too much of a smart aleck. He wants to be minister for everything, and they kind of feel give him enough rope and he'll hang himself kind of thing, and some of his quick fixes will come back under Biden. But now they're saying he's going up in the polls, could he go up more? Will that happen? And so therefore should we actually be trying to hand trip him?
But you see, the problem there is, and we discussed this previously, they need transfers from each other to keep
they can't
each other
break up. Like it's an unhappy marriage in terms of, like, I want to sleep with the woman next door, but the reality is I can't, for the kids' sake, leave. That's where they're at.
And well, Micheál Martin ruled out coalition with Sinn Féin in one of those interviews this week, very firmly.
Oh no, there's no strategically they're aligned.
But let's come back though to the what you say about Simon Harris, because one thing that jumped out at me from one of the interviews he did at the Parliamentary Party Thinking was no to a Minister for Infrastructure. Because this is one of the big ideas.
So I missed it. Who said that?
Micheál Martin said that. He? Right. He said he's against the idea of a minister.
Then he was definitely touchy.
No, he was quite. And this is Simon Harris's big idea.
Oh, absolutely.
This is his big thing. This is going to get everything going on a faster basis. And Micheál Martin just said no.
Yeah.
No, don't think that's a good idea.
Let's be clear. Everyone at Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General, Custom House, DPER, Finance, Transport, DEC, Energy are all totally opposed to it.
So is this Micheál Martin reading the room within the public service, within the apparatchik, knowing that they all want to protect their little bit of fiefdoms and that it's an enormous amount of problem if you try to solve this Department of Infrastructure, that it'll take years to actually get it in place. You'll slow everything up by trying to do it. Much better to try and get the system as it is working properly rather than try and rebuild the system.
Yeah. They think Harris is too smart by half.
Is he?
Sorry, is he? Time will tell. I just don't know. Like, he definitely has brought energy. But the other curious...
Can I ask you about the independents? Because, you know, I've just realised we've spent an awful lot of time on this podcast talking about the political parties, the groupings. But there is a grouping of independents, or there's multiple groupings of independents who could be quite important when it comes to the general election, particularly if you believe the polls that 20% of votes will be cast for independents. Have you been getting any soundings from any of the independents as to what's going on with them?
Well, so first of all, there are a group of independents that aren't in the business of government, what I call the kind of anti-abortion rump of Michael Healy-Rae, Carol Nolan, Mattie McGrath, mostly sort of ex-Fianna Fáil gene pool. They're not really interested in being in government. They're interested in having a fiefdom in their constituency, topping the poll, but they're not real government players. Independent Ireland, Michael Collins, Miss Fitzmaurice are very interested in that, and they want to add. And the independents, like, bizarre.
No. This is like the People's Front of Judea, the Judean People's Front.
They were Michael McNamara, Pringle, Catherine Connolly, Marion Harkin. Those people aren't that, they're quite left-wing. So, and Independents for Change, which is Claire Daly's group, John Collins, are also not. So
Claire Daly isn't in the Dáil yet.
The group that is in play and very much want to get into government are the regional independents. So what I'm hearing around and about them is that actually, is it Cathal Berry, Dr. Cathal Berry?
Cathal Berry, former army officer down in Kildare.
That he is actually very much seen as within, not publicly, but as seen. Now, he doesn't have a safe seat, because maybe the sort of...
He'd love to be Minister for Defence.
Okay.
And he would have big ideas about... If he was, for example, if he was to be re-elected to the Dáil, and if there were these regional independents, yeah, I can imagine they would put him forward for a role to upgrade defence to being a senior portfolio rather than being added on to somebody else's, like it is with Micheál Martin, a president in the Foreign Affairs. And that part of the price would be a significant investment, capital investment and current spending investment in bringing our defence forces up to 21st century standards.
So the problem for Cathal Berry is that there's a scalp of Port Arlington that was in Kildare South, has now gone into the three-seater of Laois. He's moved to Kilcullen, and he was actually thinking of running in Laois, but now has said he's going in Kildare South. So he's lost that vote. Secondly, it's reckoned he got about 3,000 army votes around Newbridge area, the Curragh camp and so on. And that, morale is very low, numbers are down and so on. That mightn't be as good for him this time. So he's not
So they might feel that in his time in the Dáil, he's managed to do nothing for them.
Exactly. And maybe the expectations were too high.
Then he has to run on the premise that he might be the next Minister for Defence.
Okay, well, that or Defence. That's good. So what I'm hearing is the other person that's always named as the leader of the group is actually not the leader, Ivan, because they don't trust him very far and they think he's too much up the backside of Fine Gael, and that is Michael Lowry, that he is not the pivotal figure. So I'm told that Matty Shanahan is a pivotal figure.
From Waterford.
Yeah, I'm told that Verona is, especially Noel Grealish is. And who's Noel Grealish's best pal? Michael McDowell. So put it like this, I actually think a whole new level of vigour will come around the regional interest, but you can rest assured Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are looking at two groupings. Leaving aside Independent Ireland, because they mightn't just get enough seats. They're looking at regional independence and them doing, and Gene Poole a satisfaction. They're looking at the Labour Party. The Labour Party, not publicly, privately, have let it be known, look at our age, look around us, we're interested in going into government. And so therefore, if they got 10, so I see it's the regional independence or Labour to make up the numbers.
Social Democrats? Because Holly Kearns seemed quite confident. Well, no, she wouldn't be drawn on you making the prediction of up to 10 seats.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't be drawn on that. But do you really see the Social Democrats getting 10 seats? Because that puts them into play.
After some of the people I spoke to in Cork, I'd certainly be dialing some of that down in terms of the Soc Dems. But look, election is an election. There's problems in replacing both Catherine Murphy and
I tell you, I mean, and I think it's fair enough to say this, but Holly Kearns will be hoping, well, will she be hoping for a February election? I presume she will, because as she said, she's due in November.
Yeah. So it couldn't be worse timing for her.
No, it's really very unfortunate. Funny, when you talk about independence, and you keep bringing up Michael McDowell, and you did...
Well, I'm just in his pally with Grealish.
Yeah, but you bring him up as a potential at the age of 72, running again for the Dáil in Dublin Bay South, not having been in the Dáil now since 2007, obviously in the Shannon. There's somebody else who's reappearing on the political stage, Alan Shatter.
Oh, yeah.
Alan Shatter was on primetime on RT last night. I didn't see it, unfortunately, but I believe he had a debate with Paul Murphy of People Before Profit on inheritance tax. And he's playing coy on this. Some people are asking, well, are you thinking of running in the general election as an independent in Rathdown? And I just, well, not Rathdown, sorry, is it? It's what constituency?
It is Dublin Rathdown. It's a 4-seat constituency, yeah. They've got a scalp of Dunleary. Foxrock has moved into it to make it a 4-seat.
I mean, Alan is in his 70s now. He's 72, I think he is, yeah.
We were elected to the Dáil on the same day, shared an office and all that kind of thing.
Okay, do you think, would he like to get back in? And also, if he was to run on the inheritance tax basis, is that a good basis to run on? And what would his position on Israel? Because he is an unapologetic, diehard supporter of Israel doing whatever Israel wants to do, and he's completely against the government endorsement of Palestine and all the rest of it. I wonder, would that figure in any way when it came to people deciding on their votes?
So the rupture in the road between Enda Kenny, who appointed Shatter as his justice minister, because he had done a huge stint and he got no ministry. He got nothing from Bruton. He got completely disregarded in the Rainbow government. And of course, Shatter believes he should be AG or Minister for Justice or both, at least.
He's not short of self-confidence about his own abilities, is he? Or even as a novelist.
Exactly.
Particularly with those steamy sex scenes he used to love putting in.
So
did you talk to him about those novels and the steamy sex scenes?
Put it like this. Alan is an acquired taste. That's all I can say. So what I would say is this. So I have a very close friend who is a good friend of his, and such a good friend. He calls him the Hebrew, and he's a very good friend of his, and they socialise together and have for 40 years.
And there's no offence taken.
No, well, obviously they're that close that there's no offence taken. I said to him a few years ago, "What's the story about Shatter?" And he said that Gallagher Shatter which was the preeminent family law firm.
Absolutely.
Like if I was divorcing Deirdre, the first person I'd ring would be Gallagher Shatter.
Yeah, but I bet you Deirdre would have made the phone call first.
Well, absolutely. The point is they get their pound of flesh. So what I'm saying there is that practice has been sold. He no longer has any practice. So he's available time-wise. He's not like he's doing other things. I understand he spends a number of months a year in Florida, and he actually is not short of a few bob.
No, he's, if you look at the register of interest from the last time he was in the Dáil, he has significant property portfolio.
Yeah. So he has had a meeting on the 16th of September this week in the Goat. And it was a public meeting for what's called ITRC, Inheritance Tax Reform Campaign. And it was a public, and of course it was nothing to do with the election. It was just to pursue this grave injustice that the threshold to give a son or a daughter a child was paying a penal tax after 35,000. Okay. Yeah. And a family home in Rathdown area would be more than that, and you'd have to sell the family home and all that good stuff. All that good stuff. Do I think that he wants to stand for the Dáil, is, looking for a cause? Yes. However, he's at a stage in life, you know what, and this is true of a lot of people. If you approach, Michael Dignan was approached in Offaly to stand for a party. The famous hurler.
Offaly hurler, and he writes for the Irish Mail on Sunday, very good.
And he co-commentates and so on.
RT,
he would be a household name. And also, there's a resurgence of Offaly hurling, and he would be chairman of the whatever.
He's chairman of the county board, yeah.
So he would be well known.
Who's taken on Mickey Hart as joint manager for the football next year.
All of that good stuff. My answer to all those people, because, Phil Hogan would approach people like that back in the day to stand. They'd all stand if they were guaranteed election. It's the same for Shatter and so on. So what Phil would do is invent a poll showing them that they were getting 24% of the vote and talk to them that way. That's the way you do it. But like the end of the day, I think Shatter is going to have to look over his shoulder at this phenomenon that I think is Mick Delaney, the butcher from, is it Glencullen or Glencairn? But basically, he got 3,500 votes in the local elections. He's going to be able to give free burgers. He's going to be able to give free barbecues, ice cream vans and all the rest of it. And everyone is looking at him. And I'd say...
So what have ice cream vans got to do with being
sorry, if you want to create a jamboree of handing out leaflets, instead of knocking on doors, having an ice cream van and all the kids run out is a good way of doing it. It's the smartest I've heard in a long time.
Well, in fairness, it used to be the way some people used to sell drugs around Dublin as well. Anyway.
So the way it is this, I think he'll make a calculated decision, but does he want to be a TD again? 100% in my opinion.
My God, it's a drug, isn't it? I mean, 70-something's fun to go. By the way, your friend Bernard Durkin got the nomination in Kildare. He's running again at the age of 79. He's even older than Donald Trump.
Let me tell you about that. So I'm doing the rounds with them all here, right? And Fine Gael people would say, oh, don't mention the war. Oh, Jesus Christ, Kildare North, we're doing our head. And I said, what's the problem? We just cannot get a JCB big enough to get and dig a hole and put Bernard Durkin in it. It is crazy. The only appointments he does is hospital appointments, and his wife isn't well either. And that, the reality of this is he shouldn't be running. He's not able. But he wants to be the oldest parliamentarian in the history of the state. He's in the top 5 now. So if it was a 5-year term and he got in 79, he'd be 84. So... what did they do? They had a succession plan, unlike a lot of air. And the succession plan is Councillor Joe Neville. And Joe Neville is a leak slip, I think. So Joe Neville got. So what they said, well, okay, we'll put someone else up his backside. We'll get another female councillor and we'll run the 3. And so it was only when I met the other party people, Catherine Murphy would be strong there, Fianna Fáil would be strong there, James Lawless is there. They said, we've polled this. Durkin is a certainty. What are Fine Gael getting their knickers in a knot about? He's going to get elected. So accidentally, Fine Gael are going to end up maybe holding that seat.
Okay, look, we might leave it there for this edition of Path to Power. There's lots of other things that we want to talk about on the subscription edition as well. We'll talk about, in particular, some of your questions that we're going to answer.
And bank supervision?
Yes, central bank regulation, because that we spoke about last week, and there's been more details on that this week. A response by Gabriel McClough, the central bank governor, in relation to that. I want to talk about third level education funding on that and where Simon Harris expects to get the money.
What do you ask someone with an arts degree? You see, Matt is one of these people who wants unlimited money to go into higher ed. I want money to go into apprenticeships and STEM subjects.
So do I.
But what do you say to someone who got an art degree? Can I have chips with that, please?
Okay, and we will also talk about the potential of losing foreign direct investment. And anyway, there's a lot in that which we will be available to you from, I think, Monday evening or Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning it is, on the Path to Power subscription edition. But this one, of course, remains available to you. You can get it ad-free if you want, or you can get it each Saturday.
And you can get 4 episodes from the live shows as well.
That's
as
true.
a first instalment on the subscription.
Absolutely. What about value for money, huh?
Indeed.
All for less than the price of a pint in Dublin, but slightly more than the price of a pint where Ivan gets his drink in Enniscorthy. So for this edition of Path to Power, from me, Matt Cooper.
And from me, Ivan Yates.
Thank you for joining us. And it's mail@pathtopowerpodcast.com to get in touch, and to subscribe, it's pathtopowerpodcast.com.